Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Laura McKenna. We are going to have a presentation tonight entitled Navigating the Disability Safety Net, SSI, State Supports, and More. Let me get going here. So welcome to the Autism College Connection. At the Autism College Connection, our mission is to connect parents, students, and schools with the best information about colleges and support systems for young adults with autism and similar issues. Hi, I'm Laura McKenna. I'm CEO and founder of the Autism College Connection. I have 3 decades of experience in education. I started off as a special education teacher in my early 20s. Later, I became a college professor with a PhD in politics and education policy. I'm a writer with headlines in the nation's top newspapers and magazines where I explore many topics, including colleges and autism. I work in my community to support students with disabilities. Not surprisingly, I'm an autism mom, and that's why I'm here. Tonight's talk, Navigating the Disability Support System, is about a really complicated system for supporting adults with disability that we have in this country. Hopefully, our young people will find great jobs and be completely independent and no longer need social services. But I'm a big believer in having a plan A and a plan B. For many of you, the state support system might be a plan B. Others, it might be a plan A. Regardless, we all have to go through the same steps. Managing the disability support system is one of the challenges in our transition journey. It officially starts at age 18, but preparations should start even earlier. It's a several-step process, which involves 2 levels of government, duplicate forms, long waits, and organization. The whole process, beginning to end, can take 2 years or more. There's a lot of jargon, SSI, DDD, DBRS. Frankly, it's a pain in the ass, but it's worth it. If you make it through the gauntlet, your student will have an insurance policy to protect them in the future. It's worth doing it. It's worth doing it early, and it's worth doing it right. Tonight, I'm going to give you a presentation that will provide you with a roadmap for going forward. This presentation is about 40 minutes. I'll open it up at the end for comments. Please type in any of your questions into the chat as we go along through this presentation. My goals for this talk is to help sort out all this jargon for you. I'm going to define the terms SSI, Medicaid, DDD, and you might have to, we'll record it, and you might need to see it again. We'll put it on YouTube. I'm going to provide you with a to-do timetable. What is the order of events? I will explain to you who qualifies for the funding. I'm going to cover the whole system. I'm going to give you the big picture, which is going to cover 2 levels of government and multiple bureaucracies. We're going to talk about the benefits of the system. Why should you go to the trouble of applying for these benefits? I'm going to provide you with some examples from my state, but this is a national audience. So we're going to talk, when we get to the state's portion of the talk, I'm going to talk in generalities with some examples for my state. And I'm going to stick to the basics. This is a complicated topic. As you become more advanced, you're going to have more questions, but we're going to not handle, this is a talk to get people started. We're not going to get into the weeds. So because we are talking about money and finances and legal issues, I have to put a disclaimer on this talk. Disclaimer, the Autism College Connection, LLC, does not provide legal, accounting, or tax advice. This webinar has been prepared for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied upon for legal, accounting, or tax advice. You should consult your own tax, legal, and accounting advisors before engaging in any transaction. So with that out of the way, let's jump in. First step is SSI, which stands for Supplemental Security Income. All of you, wherever you are in this country, Oregon, Florida, New Jersey, this is where you start. You can just type in Supplemental Security Income into Google and you will get the first application. You will start this paperwork process when they turn 18 and your child becomes an adult in the eyes of the government. Adults qualify for SSI if they are disabled, have limited income and resources, and have impairments that are expected to last more than a year. While the forms can't be submitted until their 18th birthday, preparations should start earlier. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Because this is a program aimed at low-income individuals, the young person can never have more than $2,000 in your bank account. The government doesn't care how much you earn because this is a program for the young person, not you. The government doesn't have a checklist of official diagnoses that they recognize. Autism may or may not be covered depending on its severity. The government says that a disability must be significant enough to prevent a person from earning substantial gainful activity. And we'll talk about what that means in a minute. The first step, even before we get to filling out the paperwork at that website for SSI, is you have to arrange your finances or your child's finances. You want to make sure that your child does not have a bank account in their name with any money in it. It should be goose egg zero. And the best way to do it is you don't want to drain that money the day before you fill out your finances because the government will know because they know everything. So you want to start earlier. You want to even preferably start 3 years ahead of time, closing out any bank accounts that, or, selling any stock that's in their name. And you want their assets to be at zero. I believe 529s are okay, but that's an issue that you should bring up with your accountant. You should. So we had a little money put aside for our son in a bank account. Maybe it was $20,000 with like birthday money and gifts from grandparents and some money that we were putting away for his future. We took that money and we created our own bank account in our name, but it's, we know it's his money, but it's just for internal purposes. We also created a special needs trust. We have a financial advisor coming to talk to this group in 2 weeks. If you need to know more about what a special needs trust is, he can definitely help you out there. So, what is a documented disability? If you have a medically, this is the government's quote here. If you have a medically determinable physical or mental impairment, including an emotional or learning problem, which results in the inability to do substantial gainful activity, can be expected to result in death, I hope not, or has been going on for at least 12 months. Okay, so let's break this all down. All of our children have some sort of a disability. They have autism or dyslexia or intellectual disability. We need documentation from that. The government needs documentation. They want a neurologist, a psychologist, a doctor, preferably MDs, providing them with information that says little Johnny has autism, has level 2 autism. This has been going on since he's been 2 years old. He cannot talk. He has trouble following directions. Whatever the diagnosis is, and more than the diagnosis, like all of the ways that this disability has impacted this child's life. And a history of special education helps too. IEPs showing that this child has been in the system with a documented issue for a long time. Make sure you get documentation for all the disabilities. So for example, autism. Autism doesn't just go on its own. It travels in a bus with other disabilities. It's got, frequently people with autism also have OCD, anxiety, epilepsy, intellectual disorders, dyslexia, and depression, and so on. You want all of those diagnoses in a report from an MD doctor. It's going to take a little while to chase all that stuff down. So you start it ahead of time. Start getting it at age 17. So at age 18, you are ready to go. These evaluations should say, if possible, that the disability that this child has would mean that they cannot work at a typical full-time job, and explain why. Some doctors will put that in. Some say that's not their job. They can't say that. That's fine. But most doctors are very aware of the reports that are needed for SSI. And if you explain to them that you need this report for the government and to highlight the negatives, they'll do that. So let's go back. Let's talk about what substantial gainful activity is, SGA, okay? A child's disability or a young adult's disability has to be significant enough so that they can't work a job that would pay for a non-blind individual $1,600 a month. That's like a part-time job at McDonald's, okay? So in the meantime, while you're waiting to get in the system, do not have your child work any paid employment if possible. Sometimes high schools want to get the kids out and have some work experience or an internship. That's fine. Just make sure that your student does not actually earn money from those supported jobs. I've heard stories about students with very highly supported jobs that they could not do independently, but they earned $50, and that caused problems for them getting SSI. So put off the paycheck until this process is done. So you need to have a disability that would mean that it would be hard to work at McDonald's. Okay, that's the hypothetical. That's what I want you to keep in mind. And so let's think it through. You know, could my child work at a fast food restaurant? It's actually a lot of skills that go involved with working behind the cash register at a fast food restaurant. There's basic skills. So think through for yourself. Can you imagine them making change? Could they stand on their feet for 5 to 7 hours? Could they hear an order and click the right buttons on the cash register? Could they work alongside other workers and be compatible? Could they be polite to a rude boss? Or a boss who wasn't very smart? Or just a boss in general? My son had problems calling people dummies for a while. That would get him fired in a second. Could they focus doing one thing for 5 hours? Because that's what they'll be doing, just one thing. Could they concentrate on their job without anybody helping them? No teacher, no job coach, just them there alone. And then the randomness. A lot of people, for example, with autism, can't manage randomness. What happens if you've got a customer who walks in drunk and can't talk well? How would your student handle that? Would they be able to? Would they have a meltdown? What would they do if a customer put in a whole order and then realized they forgot their wallet? My son would call them stupid. Could your young person avoid looking at their phone for 5 hours straight? Could they avoid talking about their interests for 5 hours? Like no discussion about memes, Pixar, trains. For some of our kids, that's hard to do. So here's one thing you don't need to get this disability. You don't necessarily need to have an intellectual disability. Half of people with autism have an intellectual disability, half don't. But it's really about the full picture about the disability. All of those issues that I was discussing about working in the fast food restaurant, it's really difficult for people with autism. You know, many have poor attention. You know, just go through yourself, you know, and think about all the ways that it would be hard for maybe your very smart student who's got 1,300 on his SATs, but refuses to do activities that are low interest activities, refuses to cooperate and just do the same job over and over again. All of that would get a person fired in 5 minutes from a job. Speech and communication issues, even low muscle tone, which is so common for people in autism, it makes it difficult for them to stand on their feet for a full shift at a fast food restaurant. Think about all the sensory issues that can come up at a job. So my son had an internship at Best Buy. He loves computers. He loves technology. You would think it was his dream job, but he couldn't stand to be on the floor of Best Buy with all the TVs going on all the time, all around. So he went around the store secretly turning off all the TVs. And that job did not last very long. Well, they put him in the back after a while, but that would interfere with full-time employment. So this is an exercise for you. You have to think of all of the ways that your child would struggle with full-time employment. And that is how we're going to fill out the form. But we'll talk about that more in a little bit. So you're going to start the Social Security application. You go to that website. First step is just the basics, your address, your Social Security number, all of that basic. It's still a long form, but it's pretty much the basics. Then you're going to wait around for a while and you'll get information that you have to fill out another form. And you will need to give more information about your child's abilities and disabilities. Be patient. This whole process is going to take a year, up to a year, and you may send out your form and not hear back from anybody for 2 months, and suddenly you'll get something in your email box. The Social Security system is understaffed at the moment. They never recovered from COVID, and that's how it works. The good thing is that you will get paid retroactively once the system gets going. Keep good records. Never send anything out without making a copy and putting in a folder, because they may lose it. And this way you have it and say, look, I did it. Don't give up. It's boring. And you fill out a form, you forget about it for 2 months, and then they come at you with, okay, now you got to do this. Just stick it through. It'll be worth it. When you're filling out the form, especially the second form where it's going to ask you some questions about your child's ability, it's important to think about your child on the worst day and think about your child without all the invisible supports that you provide. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Be very descriptive. Use up all the space and do it at age 18. Don't delay. Studies show that families that submit their applications early, like 18 rather than 28, have a greater chance of getting approved. So what do I mean by thinking about your child on the worst day? Thinking about them with no supports. So think about the last 90 days that you have been with your child. Think about them on a day when they've been hangry, haven't slept properly, stressed out, haven't had their medication. We all have good days and bad days. That's just being human. I want you to think about your child on the worst day, and we're going to answer questions thinking about how they were on that day. It might be a real life bad day that you would prefer to forget, but we have to think about these worst case scenarios as we're doing the forms. We also have to think about how our children would act without us helping them. There is a million different ways that we provide invisible supports for our children. We are so used to providing these supports, we don't even notice them anymore. When I was filling out the forms for the first time, I got some help with a local social worker. And we were talking through the questions. And a sample question is, can you eat breakfast on your own? Yes or no? And actually, so you have to fill out this form as if you were, you respond as the parent, even though the question is aimed at your child. They know it's not a perfect system. So the question was, can you eat breakfast on your own? Yes or no? And I said, yeah, he has cereal in the morning. Yes. And she said, can he really eat breakfast on his own, Laura? She says, who buys a cereal? And I said, I do. She says, who sets up the cereal bowl on the same shelf every day? Like, that's me. Who puts the bowl in the dishwasher? I do. Who buys the milk? Me. Is the milk in the same place in the fridge every day? Yes. Do you buy a particular brand of cereal every week? Yes. What happens if there isn't any cereal on that shelf? Would he skip breakfast? And I said, yes. She says, okay, he can't eat breakfast on his own. So that's how you have to answer the questions. So this is a sample of the questions that you will actually see on the SSA form. For example, what do you do from the time you wake up until going to bed? So I wrote, son ignores his alarm until a parent enters the room to wake him up. He needs 3 prompts. So notice I put a number and I was very specific. Parent has to set up the pantry so he can locate the cereal easily. He eats cereal and leaves dirty bowl on the counter. If food was not provided, he would not eat. He finishes getting ready for this program with many prompts about routine and timing. A bus takes him to his 18 to 21 program. When he returns, a parent takes him to medical or educational appointments. He plays video games and watches videos until bed. A parent provides him with dinner. He does not assist with meal prep or cleanup. He needs prompts for evening medication and nighttime routines. Okay, that's a sample. That's what I want you to do. Everybody's going to answer this differently. This is just an example. Highlight the negative, worst day, all of your supports. If you don't do house or yard work, explain why not. He does not have the ability to learn these skills at this time due to executive functioning and attentional issues. At current time, obsessive thoughts and sensory issues interfere with his ability to perform those tasks. It also include weak muscle tone. There's a lot of ways that you can say no to all of that. Describe the kinds of things you do with others. How often do you go places and how much do you take part? So many of our kids can't leave the house without our help because they can't drive. Put all of that in there. And then there's a final section where you can leave remarks, write a lot, fill it in. I wrote, as a person with autism, my son is very rigid and resistant to getting input from others. He will argue with teachers and supervisors. Typical teachers and supervisors find those behaviors very irritating. He has a short attention span for non-preferential tasks. He has sensory issues. And you can see, I just added a lot of information, really highlighting on his negative. I brought in other concerns, diagnoses, OCD, anxiety disorder, medication, put all of that in there. So if you get past that second step with all that questionnaire that is asking for your son or daughter's behaviors on the worst day, then you might have an interview with a doctor who's going to weigh in on your application. Doesn't always happen, but it might happen. We were sent to a doctor about 30 minutes away. They were hired to evaluate all SSI applications. There's a form that they read from. They asked my son a series of questions, repeat a set of numbers backwards and forwards. They will ask to explain what a term is, like what does raining cats and dogs mean? It's best if the examiner sees your child on his worst day, because one bad day at a job will get them fired. So don't give your child their medication that morning. You can have them have 2 jelly donuts before going in there, which are all possibilities in the real world. If your child is dysregulated and inappropriate, do not correct them or nudge them to behave. This is one time when you want your child to be as disabled as possible. There will be some questions that your student can't answer because of language difficulties or because they're uncomfortable with the questions. You'll have to speak up for them. Unfortunately, You may have to speak negatively about your child in front of them. It's very uncomfortable. You might have to describe disturbing mental health issues and rehash some painful experiences. If possible, you can ask if your child can wait in the hallway while you talk about it with the doctor, but they may not even ask you these questions. Still, you're going to be bringing up a lot of dirt from the past, and it's going to feel mean to talk about your beloved child in this way, but it's necessary. This evaluator must understand the full extent of your student's disabilities before giving approval for SSI. Your student may feel a little down after this interview process because they couldn't answer all the questions or you highlighted their weaknesses in front of them. It's unfair that families must be put in this position, but that's how the process works. So on the drive home from the interview, explain to your child that they were interviewing for a special scholarship that goes to people who overcome various obstacles, or just take them out for burgers and fries and tell them how awesome they are. So we get through all of this. You've gone through 2 applications, the easy one and the hard one. You've gone through the interview. They've given you approval. What happens next? You will get a check, or your child will get a check for about $650 per month. Maybe another $300 if you charge them rent. Funds will go directly to the individual, not to the parents. 1 year, that's about $7,800. You'll set up a bank account in your child's name, which can be accessed by you. The government will send the funds to the bank. The check will arrive bi-monthly with no paperwork. The good news is you'll rarely need to interact with the Social Security Administration again. Yes, there's a pain in the neck to get in the system, but once you're in, everything should happen automatically, and you will only have rare contact with them. Your young adult should get a debit card to spend their funds. A debit card will provide records of the expenditures, so you don't have to independently have an accounting system. The bank's receipts will have everything on there. It can be shared with the government in case of an audit. It's also a useful way for your young person to learn how to do a little shopping on their own. They can go in town and buy their own burritos. They can get coffee at Starbucks. It's a way to gain a little independence from you. With your name on the account too, you can monitor the account to make sure that your child hasn't overdrawn the account and has spent enough. Remember, you can't have more than $2,000 in that bank account ever, so it does require some oversight. How can you use this money? Well, there's definitely appropriate uses. I love them going into town and getting a burrito for lunch on their own. You can use it for medical, speech therapy, social skills classes, class at the community college, clothes. They can buy all their clothes, use it for, go to the Old Navy website and get all their jeans and t-shirts. They can use it for personal items within reason, a video game, maybe, ticket to a movie, gym membership. That money goes fast. Here's what you can't use it for. The child can't buy extravagant gifts for family members. They can't spend it on like cigarettes or booze. Just be smart about it. They definitely also can't use it to buy groceries for the whole family. It's really supposed to be about their needs and their expenditures. So there is a very high rate of rejection for SSI applications. However, that rejection rate is for all people applying for SSI. That includes like my neighbor who applied for it because she got carpal tunnel from the working the deli machine at Stop and Shop. So there's a lot of people applying for SSI. It's not just young people with autism. We really don't know what the acceptance rate is for young people with autism or other disabilities. It's all mixed in together. We also don't know how many people are rejected simply because they didn't fill out the paperwork properly. It is very confusing. So we're not really sure what the real rejection rate is. Still, if you follow the rules that I've laid out here, it highly increases your chances of getting approval on the first time. If you need to appeal, then you might need to hire a lawyer. And that's a whole nother step. The ARC, which is a national nonprofit that helps families with disabilities, they have a pretty good website that explains how to hire a lawyer for SSI. So, Medicaid. This is step 2. Medicaid is a jointly funded federal state health insurance program for low-income and disabled people. Your child will be automatically enrolled in Medicaid once they get through SSI. It just happens automatically. They might ask you which healthcare company you want, but if you don't pick one, they will just assign one to you. So Medicaid is more than just health insurance. When I first got this Medicaid form, I was like, why do I need this? My husband's got health insurance. I don't need this. You need this. You need this. This is how the money travels from the federal government to the states. It is a necessary step in this whole process. The money goes from the federal government to the states through Medicaid. So here's your system. We're going to start off at the national level in DC with SSI. So SSI, getting through the system, does 2 things. It gives individual money, and then it triggers Medicaid. Medicaid gives a block grant, gives a pile of money to all the states. All 50 states get money from Medicaid. And because it's a block grant, there are very few strings attached to it. They have to spend it on disabled people, but the federal government doesn't tell them exactly how their system should work. So therefore, we have 50 different systems for disability in our country. 50 states, 50 systems. They have different rules, different opportunities, different money. Sorry, that's just how it works. Can't talk about all 50 systems here tonight, so I'm going to give you an overview of how this works. So the money just, it travels. It starts at the federal level, it goes down to the states give it to their state disability departments, then it goes to various third parties, and then it finally will get to your child and to you. So again, we have 50 different systems of state disability system. It's funded by Medicaid. Because the money has already been given to the states, you're going to fill out another set of applications, but it's different. The first set with SSI was determining whether or not the young person is actually disabled. The state systems are determining how disabled they are. They're sorting people out between the very disabled to the lightly disabled. Unfortunately, it's another application process. And you've already been trained. You already know, can my child work at McDonald's? What is my child like on their worst day? You're going to apply those same standards, but to the state. This, unfortunately, could take another year. So here's an example. This is the New Jersey system. So we go through a department, it's called DDT, the Department of Developmental Disabilities. And like Social Security, first you fill out just a basic form with your Social Security number and address. Then eventually you're asked to fill out a questionnaire assessing their disability. It's called the NJCAT. This form, this application is 35 pages long with 61 questions. It's all multiple choice, and they don't define terms. So, for example, here's a question. Does your child make direct eye contact when you or others are talking to him, her, or does he, she tend to look away? And you have 2 options, makes eye contact or looks away. Now, all of us know that our kids sometimes make eye contact and sometimes don't. It really depends on a million different variables. They don't ask that. If they don't ask that, then you immediately go to the worst day. They don't make eye contact and they've had a terrible day. No, looks away. You want to describe your child truthfully, always truthfully, but worst day. They also don't define key word terms in this application. For example, they might say, would you say your child has mild, moderate, or severe epilepsy? I might define severe epilepsy one way, another person might define it a different way. If you can come up with a definition of it, and if somebody asks you about it, you can answer truthfully, then that's what you should do. You should apply for these state systems as soon as the SSI application is done. You may not actually get the money till they're 21, but you can start that application quickly. And you want to be ready to go on their you want that check in your hand on their 21st birthday. So what does this mean? So, all right, again, this is New Jersey money. Doesn't apply to other states, but I just want to give you a flavor of the kind of supports that are out there. While SSI is not a huge amount of money, the states provide a lot more. So we have two systems here. The support system, that's the basic, entry-level system. And everyone gets that as soon as they're in the system. And then we have the community care program. That is, there's a waiting list for that. You could actually wait for 10 years before you get that money. So what we have is we have different tiers depending on disability. A through E with a small a that's called the acuity. That's for people who have behavioral problems, who need extra help. So that's pretty rare to find. So a typical diagnosis might be a tier C for a level 2 autistic child with epilepsy. So that's about $47,000 a year. That will be resources that go to your child every year, on top of the $7,000 that you're getting from Social Security. And in 10 years, that money could go up to $169,000. That will be used for housing and all sorts of other important adult things. Sound good? Okay, so this money can be used, as I said, in various ways. It can be used to fund day programs. Some students need to be supervised in a full day structured program. It could be used to fund therapy. It could be used, you could create a DIY system where your child goes to a gym class at 8, an art class at 10, has a part-time job at the pizza place from 2 to 4, then comes back and has a math tutor. All of that can be funded through this with this money. You could also get yourself designated as a direct support coordinator, meaning that you are watching and supervising your child rather than paying somebody else to do it. And that whole $47,000 could go to you to manage their care. So you get, first of all, we get money for helping to take care of our child and activities to keep them busy during the day. You will also get assigned a case manager who will help you, steer you to the right places, fill out the paperwork properly, and be sort of intermediary between you and the state. They also, by being in the system, you also have access to social workers who can swoop in a case of emergency. Worst case scenario, somebody, you pass away and you need somebody, the state has to jump in. If all this paperwork has been taken care of, it's a seamless process. If it hasn't, it could take the state a little while to come in and help out. One of the annoying parts about this whole process is that it's not coming from one bureaucracy. It's not coming from one system. It's not even coming from one source of government. Unfortunately, we have to go and find all of these little satchels of money and benefits and collect them for our children. But it adds up to a substantial amount of support. Got SSI, the state system. Every state has it's called Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, different names in different states, but the same thing. There's more. There's every state will have other sources of support for disability. I can't go into them at all in this presentation. It does require a little networking to find it. But the case manager who manages your state system could be a source to help you find all of this. Truthfully, what you can do is once you get used to it, you create bi-monthly paperwork chores. If you do it right, you're organized, it really just takes a few minutes. Everyone has to ask themselves, is this worth the hassle? It definitely takes a lot of time to fill out all that paperwork. It takes time to go on appointments, and there's always ongoing paperwork, and truth is, time is finite. Is it better for you to use that time to take a family vacation or take another job? Maybe it is worth it. There could be a great deal of support. The average amount of support is about $50,000. That's significant. It can be a real source of support for your family. You'll have a case manager who can help you out, and it's protection for the future. In the end, this is a personal decision. I'm just providing you guys with the pros and the cons and giving you the roadmap for going forward. So, doing all of this paperwork to get into the system is just one of a series of tasks that you need to do to transition your child to adulthood. It has to happen alongside other chores. But if we chunk these jobs, if we take them and do it in terms of yearly chores, it's much more doable. It's much more doable. Getting through this process, it is a massive endeavor. So we're going to chunk it. Think about freshman year of high school. Ask the school to do some evaluations of your child. Make sure that their transition goals match up with what the school is actually doing. If your child's goal is to go to MIT, are they taking classes in high school that will get them to that end goal? Think about having a plan A and a plan B. During the sophomore and junior years, you should take care of all your legal chores, have a will, special needs trust, and guardianship. We'll talk about that another time. Make sure that there's no money in the bank account in your child's name. That's really a 5-minute job. Just take care of it. Reassess long-term goals on the transition program. Get evaluations from your medical professionals that focus on the deficits and obstacles to employment. And remember, do not let them accept any paid employment. Senior year. For every family, senior year of high school is crazy. For us, it's crazy in a different way. So if they're 18, start that SSI application. Start touring college programs and transition programs, trying to decide where they're going to go. If they need to study for the AccuPlacer tests or the SATs, that might be happening now. Have the schools do another evaluation. They're entitled to evaluations every year if you ask, but it's especially necessary if they're planning on going to college or one of the special new IDD colleges. Again, remember, no paid employment until that SSI is done. The next step is ages 19 to 21. So by this point, they will be an SSI. You will choose an insurance company for Medicaid. You'll start the application for the state support system. You can, at that point, contact your Department of Vocational Rehabilitation to get some help with part-time employment or support for education and training. By the way, they do help pay for college. You can learn about other support systems like PPP and SNAP. And you want your student to be thriving in a transition program or maybe a college. And then from age 21 to 30, they're still growing, but all young people are still growing in their 20s. So no judgment. They will continue to build independence in college or other programs. They'll be establishing a fulfilling, independent life within the community. They will become eligible for housing programs. They'll be working on establishing regular employment and recreation. You'll be learning about ABLE accounts and other places that they can save money that they can earn from a job. You will be arranging your own finances to make sure that you have maximum support for all your adult children should you pass. So I often think about this transition period as a great leap because it's a great leap to go from high school to whatever happens next. It's a great leap for the student and it's a great leap for the parent. And because all our kids are different, each one of you will leap in your own way. This disability system is just one part of the Great Leap, but it's an important component. You'll be also figuring out education, employment, and housing, and we're here to help you along that journey. Remember to be good to yourself during this process. You probably have no background in the disability system. It's a big learning curve. The good news is that there are more resources than ever before. For parents who do their homework, there are really good options where your child will flourish and be happy. So you should do your research, talk to people, and as you're doing this research, you're going to meet some really cool people. I really do think that anybody's been touched by disability issues, either as a professional or as a parent, is just a little bit nicer than average. You're going to look around the world and see it in different ways than your friends whose kids follow more traditional paths. You'll see opportunities in new places. You'll learn to appreciate the goal of a content life over a competitive life. We'll all make a great leap in so many ways. I hope I've given you a taste of the options ahead of you. In the coming weeks, I'll bring forward other experts to explain options in colleges, transition programs. In 2 weeks, we'll have a financial expert talk to us about ABLE accounts, special needs trust, and life insurance systems that can support our kids when we're gone. If you signed up for this talk, you've automatically been signed up for our twice monthly newsletter where I have all this information about upcoming talks. Feel free to unsubscribe it if you don't want more info in your mailbox. Thank you for coming here tonight. If you need more information, go to my website. It has everything. I've got www.autismcollegeconnection.com. I'm on Facebook. I got newsletters. I'm going to take this presentation and put it on YouTube. You can contact me at connectmckenna@gmail.com. All that information is also on my website. If you need, I do private services. I give out 30 minutes of free advice, and then we can talk from there about how I can help you. I help parents look for colleges, prepare for the transition at all levels of high school, and I help out with this paperwork stuff too. So at this point, I am going to open up the comments section and see what your questions are. All right. Yes, so I'm going to have a recording. I'm going to put it on YouTube, and everybody who signed up will get the link to that. Does SSI look at parents' assets and finances if child is still living with parents? No. Most of our kids are still living with us. Our tips, just don't worry about your money. It's their money. Great tips. In our interview, my kid was magically at his best and answered questions. It was a disaster. There's nothing we can do about that. Sometimes they're just magically awesome. I like the tube jelly donut trick, but so my child is multiple disabled, which is deaf, but he wears cochlear implants, which are beneficial for him. Does he have to interview with SS or doctor with the implants on? I would do that, yes, and just be very specific about how he needs this. I think that if the cochlear implants work well enough so the person could work at, let's say, you remember my McDonald's thought process. I think that that might be okay. But you would have to consult with your doctor about that. If the hearing is still not great, even with the implants, which would mean that they couldn't work at McDonald's, then that's important. And the doctor should be able to put all of that in their report. If a child desires to go to college, does this impact on their ability to get SSI? No, no. There is no correlation. There are plenty of people, young men, young women in colleges who receive SSI. Because being in college is different than having a job. There's a whole lot of people who are awesome at their college work, especially if it's in a high interest area, but they are unable to hold a job at McDonald's. And SSI only cares about the job part. So don't worry about it. If a young adult can manage a part-time job that makes more than $1,600 a month, but not much more, certainly not enough to live on, what should they do? Well, if they've already made that kind of money, then according to the government, they're not qualified for SSI. So what you can do is you can go directly to your state. Now, states really do want everybody to go through that process first, the SSI to Medicaid to the state, because that's how they get their money. However, if a person is still pretty disabled and is already not able to get SSI, a lot of states will step in and help at that point. So you have to contact your state to ask them. My son is about to graduate college, age 23. Is it too late for him to apply to SSI? No, it's not. It's not. It's from age 18 to 65. When will you get the slides? You're not going to get the slides, but I will give you a link to this video. Do you have to ever reapply to SSI? No. You're in, you're in. That's why you want to do it early. When they're all of our kids are going to be more disabled at 18 than they are at 23. So do it early if you can. SSI will call you if there is a big change. If your child starts making a lot of money, you can start. There's a way. Once you're in SSI, you can still retain SSI, but not get a whole lot of money. If, let's say, you get a job working in Amazon, or they get a job working in Amazon warehouse, and they bring in some amount of money. Most of the states have ways that you can save some of that money, save all of that money, as long as it's not too much, in a special account. It could be an ABLE account. In New Jersey, we have something called NJ Workability. Every state has their own way of letting the person keep their benefits and still work a little bit. In New Jersey, you're actually able to work a job that pays $70,000 and still keep all of your state benefits. It's kind of amazing. Can SSI be used towards college expenses? Yes. I'm in North Jersey like you. Can you suggest which doctors specifically to take my 17-year-old for evaluation, specific names? Let's do this through email. Send me an email at connectmckenna@gmail.com, and I will copy and paste some names for you. Okay, anything more? Was this helpful or overwhelming? Okay, well, I hope it was helpful. I really enjoyed talking with all of you today. And I will send everybody a link to this YouTube conversation. And thank you for joining me tonight. Have a good night.